Doesn't New Orleans make a lot more sense than Las Vegas for a baseball team?
You are Locked On A's, your daily Oakland A's podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, A's fans, and welcome to Locked On A's, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about your Oakland A's as long as they're in Oakland and wherever they're going to play. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. I've been a baseball podcaster for well over a decade now, and this is my sixth full season here as a host of the Locked On Podcast Network. Normally, I'm the host of there's my show down there, Locked On MLB. I host that 5 days a week, too. So guess what? You get twice your pal Sully every week here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's episode is indeed brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Game Time is the place to go get your tickets, and you need to download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase, and terms do apply. Follow us at Locked On A's on Twitter, or whatever it's called now, on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. And if you're listening every single day, do what you should do? I'll tell you what you do. When you post something on social media as a response, use that hashtag EverydayA's and let us have an idea of who is out there. I'm going to tread lightly on this particular episode because I know some people will push back, and if I say anything that goes against keeping the A's in Oakland, I can't make it any clearer. I want the A's in Oakland. I think the A's could work in Oakland if they had a new stadium and management that were committed to being in Oakland. The only time it felt like in the history of the A's that they've had ownership that was committed to being in Oakland were when the Haas family were in charge. And they had top 5 attendance, 3 straight trips to the World Series. The Oakland Coliseum was rocking. Those were the glory days, even more so than the Finley years, because Charlie Finley, while he delivered a great Oakland A's team, was always looking at the exit. And we're going to talk a little bit at the end of the show about that exit, because all the different things that could have happened in A's history. So I got a little pushback on the Raiders episode. I'm going to address that later in the week from people saying, like, I was taking Fisher off the hook for reasons I cannot fathom how anyone could say that. I think Fisher has been grotesque and should be removed from baseball. But I also think the fact that the Raiders came back to the stadium and essentially ruined the stadium plays a big part of why the A's are currently in this mess. There's not one thing put us in this situation. So I want to make all that clear up front in case I haven't been clear. I want the A's here. I wanted a stadium to be built in the Oakland Coliseum parking lot. That's the most obvious place to put it. You got a big old space there already used for sports. Create something brand new. You could have that weird design they want to do in Vegas. Try it out there. Do something new and unusual that would go against what you have at Oracle Park. I wanted something new, futuristic, pushing the envelope, kind of the way the A's franchise has done throughout its history. But I have also come to grips with the fact that I can't turn back time. I can't be Superman spinning the world back and making everything right. We are at this point. The A's are going to move. It sucks. Here's what has always bothered me. Las Vegas never made sense to me as a city to play baseball. Still doesn't. It's not a very big city. It has a lot of transplanted fans who have probably still have loyalty to teams where they move from. You see that was a huge problem with what happened in Miami and in Tampa, and a huge problem what's happened in Arizona. Not that Arizona's had success, obviously, but I think it's been more successful than the Marlins or the Rays in terms of its connection with the fan base. But still, there are probably more Cub fans than there are Diamondback fans in Phoenix. I think Tampa Bay, actually, I think the Rays do have a very large fan base. They're just playing their games in the wrong city, in the wrong, physical location. So naturally, they want to build a new stadium there. That's a whole different podcast. I find that Vegas is it, it would the if the A's were the first team to move there, they would have the novelty of, hey, we've got a major league team, but they're not. They're not even the first team from Oakland to move there. And there's nowhere to play. That's still kind of sort of the biggest problem, isn't it? Where the hell are they going to play? They're playing on the surface of Dune, for goodness sakes. You can't play day games. You can't even pull the whole world to play the minor league stadium in Henderson. No, you can't. So that's why they're in this nonsense of them sharing a minor league stadium with the River Cats. I addressed that the other day. They've got to figure out a plan where they're not sharing a minor league ballpark, for goodness sakes. But there's nowhere to play. And there's very few places in America where there is a place where you could at least temporarily have a Major League Baseball team play that's just sitting there. Montreal is sitting there. And believe me, I was in that stadium. It was crumbling in 1995. I don't know what to make about the Alamo Dome, and I don't know what kind of a sports venue the people of San Antonio are. But I keep going back to New Orleans. New Orleans. If the A's had to move, wouldn't New Orleans make more sense? For so many reasons. First of all, right behind me here, you have the program from the 1972 World Series when the A's beat the Reds. In that program, there's an ad from the city of New Orleans making a pitch to have the World Series be played in the Louisiana Superdome, a neutral site World Series. That was the idea, that you don't have to worry about travel time, you don't have to worry about weather or anything like that. You could have it all in New Orleans. And remember, that was 1972. So the concept of the Super Bowl at a neutral site was still relatively new. The Super Bowl had only started 5 years prior and had just turned into a success. The first couple of Super Bowls kind of flopped. And so New Orleans was like, hey, you could do that with baseball and do it right here in New Orleans. There you go. Make it a Barney, make it a trip. And they've been trying to get a baseball team. They nearly got the Cleveland Indians at one point. They've tried to put in for expansion bids and never seemed to work. However, New Orleans and Louisiana as just a state seems to be ripe for a baseball team to arrive there. If you take a look, the Louisiana is in the just 25th most populous state in the country. Okay, but they have the New Orleans is a decent sized city. It has a history of baseball and is part, and LSU baseball is a huge baseball program. They've got a lot of fans come from the South, and you have the Louisiana Superdome. Is the Superdome an ideal place to play Major League Baseball? Of course it's not. Nor would it be the long-term solution. Kind of like how RFK Stadium was not the long-term solution for the Washington Nationals. It was a temporary solution. However, it was a solution where you said, hey, where can we have, at least for a few years, a team play Major League Baseball in a Major League Baseball caliber facility? That's New Orleans. But there's a couple other elements of New Orleans that I want to bring up that I think make it a very intriguing spot to put a Major League Baseball team. And I wind up talking about this a little bit on Locked On MLB as well, where I brought it up as a potential home for the Rays in case they decide not to go through this lunacy of building a stadium exactly where the wrong place is. But there's a type of fan that exists in New Orleans that's exactly the kind of fan that baseball should be courting and would make it a success. All right, let's hear a little bit from our friends over at Game Time. We're talking about tickets, and I'm going to be seeing a whole bunch of baseball games all this year. And let me tell you, Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, and it makes getting tickets faster and easier, and the price on Game Time actually go down the closer you get to first pitch. I'm going to be in the Bay Area for most of the summer, and I'm going to be doing a bunch of A's games and a bunch of Giants games, and I want to make sure I'm getting the best deals and the best seats. Game Time's where to go because you get killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, view from the seats, and the lowest price guaranteed. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. I like to sit in a specific place. I like to sit not field level, not upper deck. I like that middle deck. And I like to be behind home plate, but a little bit along the first base line. That's my favorite view. And when I go to Game Time, I can find that seat. I can use the panoramic view you can get. You get the seat views. You get last minute deals. And you can save up to 60% if you go last minute for comedy, sports, theater, and of course, baseball. And you can get zone deals. Like I just said, I have a section that I like to sit in. And I may not find a specific seat, but say, hey, find me something in there. Find me the best deal in there. Boom, they can get me a great deal. That's the zone seat. And they got Game Time ticket coverage, so your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. What you need to do is download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets and the lowest prices. Do you know what they are? They are guaranteed. And I hit the wrong button, but I'll tell you, get supplies from the site that's made for skilled trades, SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is a reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support from industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. Hey, where is your hub? Where is your central place to hear about all about sports? Not just baseball, but we've wrapped up the Stanley Cup, the NBA championship. Where are you going to get all your stories? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program to give you the biggest stories in sports. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or on the free Amazon Fire TV channel app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. What did I say is one of the main problems about Las Vegas as a fan base? Lots of transplanted people. It's a relatively new large population. And when people, believe me, I live in California. I live amongst a lot of people who have lived here for a generation or two, and they don't let go of where their fan base came from. People I know who are raising their children in Los Angeles or in San Francisco. So I'm still an Orioles fan. I can never let go of the Orioles. I can't get rid of the White Sox. Can't get rid of the Red Sox. Can't get rid of the Yankees, Mets, blah, 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 blah. And partly is because they have an identity with the region they moved here from. I'm a native New Englander. I know people from the tri-state area or from Chicago. And that becomes kind of like how someone with my last name is Sullivan will proudly be wearing lots of Irish stuff come St. Patrick's Day. On will come the Yankee, Red Sox, Phillies hat that they can't take off because that's their heritage. And that's a tough thing to develop. That's a very big thing with baseball. Baseball is regional, and baseball has a location regional pride. Think of the A's. The fact that those of you who are there all the time as I call the dedicated 7,000, who will show up to an A's game no matter what the hell is going on. Where is your pride in that? It's being part of the East Bay, right? It's not just being part of the San Francisco Bay Area. You're an East Bay person. It's that pride beyond that, and that cuts to a huge part of baseball fandom. What sports region has that? The Deep South in Louisiana. There's a huge pride of people from Louisiana. Go witness when they do with Saints games. Who dat and all that. They have a tremendous pride no matter where they are, and if they get transplanted, they can't shut up about it. And the Deep South has the Atlanta Braves, yes. But Atlanta's different from Louisiana. And that region around Louisiana could tap into Memphis, could tap into Alabama, could tap into parts of Texas. Louisiana is different. It's a chunk. It's this weird sort of French bistro that's been shoved into the Deep South. I've spent a lot of time in the Deep South. Alabama is very close to Louisiana. Mississippi is very close to Louisiana. I've been to all three of those places. They're very different. And yet there could be a great pull towards that and a great sense of identity. The type of identity and regional fandom that baseball needs desperately to develop a team. Now, first and foremost, what the A's need to do is they need a new owner. But there must be some wealthy owner, some wealthy billionaire with ties to the Deep South or ties to Louisiana who would say, hey, I could be the guy to bring a World Series to Louisiana. I could be the person to bring this team, this vagabond team. Ever since Connie Mack's kids kept propping up their senile father like a baseball version of Weekend at Bernie's and destroyed the Philadelphia A's. And Charlie Finley got him in Kansas City after the Johnson nonsense and offered him every city that was willing to listen to him. And they got to Oakland. And with the exception of the Haas years, they never had someone who was committed to it. And now they have Fisher, who makes people long for Donald Sterling of the Clippers. Except they're not going to make a made-for-TV movie about the Fishers because there's nothing to talk about. If they have to move, here's the things they would have. A regional fan base to build upon. A city with deep roots, going back to Andrew Jackson. And, oh yeah, a place to play. There's a mild detail. There's a tiny detail right there. One of the reasons why they can't move to Las Vegas right now, there's nowhere to play. There's nowhere to play really in Sacramento. There's nowhere. That's why the Expos move got all fouled up. But at least they had a city to move. They had to work it out with the Atlanta Braves. Not the Atlanta Braves, with the Baltimore Orioles. The A's would probably have to work it out with the Atlanta Braves, as I'm sure the Braves consider the whole South their region. But the Braves are doing fine. Besides, the eastern seaboard of the South is a lot different than the Louisiana Gulf Coast. It's a very different place psychologically, culturally, geographically. Yeah, you'd have to deal with hurricanes and things like that from time to time, like you don't have to in Florida. I don't want the A's to move. I can't be any clearer about that. And I guarantee you, even though I said that, someone is going to put in the comments, why do you want the A's to move? I don't. But if they have to, wouldn't it make more sense to put them in a place with a big population, a sports-based population, a population with regional identity and deep-rooted regional identity for generations, and a place to play? I almost said an F-bomb. I'm yelling. And some people said, I don't like it when you yell. Well, I'm yelling because I'm right. Let's talk to our friends at PrizePicks. What is PrizePicks? PrizePicks is the #1 fantasy sports app with more than 5 million members. It's the most fun and exciting way to get on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more than or less than 2 or more player stats for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. With PrizePicks, you could turn $10 into 1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports this summer, and you can make a PrizePick lineup in as little as 60 seconds. You just need to pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stats projections, and you're locked in. And PrizePicks is America's #1 sports app, and you get on the daily action with your friends and be part of the PrizePicks community today. You could now win 100 times your money with baseball and lineups of PrizePicks if you submit a winning lineup featuring our 4 Demon Squares. You'll cash in on big time on the biggest moments of the baseball season. So here's what you need to do. You need to download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Let me repeat that. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks. Pick more. Pick less. In the end, it's really that easy. Hey, this is a reminder that Locked On has created the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's available on the Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channel app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channel app. Sorry I was getting riled up, but every time I look at the move to Vegas, every day it makes less and less sense, and it drives me crazy. You know, the A's would probably still be in Kansas City if Charlie Finley was just a little more patient. He loved to antagonize everyone. He loved to antagonize the people of Oakland. He loved to antagonize the people of Kansas City. Everyone. He seemed to thrive on that. And he was still a good baseball mind. He was the person who put together the team that won 5 straight AL West titles, 3 straight World Series championships. And he was the one who brought in the Vita Blues and the Blue Moon Odoms and the Reggie Jacksons and the Sal Bandos, and pulled off the Rick Bundy for Kenny Holtzman trade. All the stuff he was able to do, he put that team together. And the foundation for that team was there when they were still playing in Kansas City. A lot of those players played on the Kansas City A's, including Reggie Jackson, including Burt Campaneris, including Catfish Hunter. So if he had just stayed in Kansas City, Kansas City was working hard to create a new sports complex. Now, they wanted to make a dome multi-purpose stadium, and it was Finley who said, no, I want a baseball-only stadium. And they created the Truman Complex to accommodate his wishes, which is why you had Arrowhead Stadium next to what was initially called Royal Stadium. Now it's called Kauffman Stadium. That's why you have those 2 stadiums there to this day. I know they're trying to build a new downtown ballpark for the Royals and a new stadium for the Chiefs, but those were created in the early 70s, and we're still using them today. A lot of those other multi-purpose stadiums had long seen the Wreckers Ball. They got a lot more use out of that. And if he had just stayed patient, he would have that stadium. Now, we wouldn't have the Oakland A's. Everyone in the Bay Area would be diehard San Francisco Giant fan. And the Raiders and the Warriors would be the identity for the East Bay, but everyone would be a Giant fan. I know that sounds weird, but who knows? If he had put that together, the great three-peat may have happened in Kansas City, and there would have been no need for an expansion team for the Kansas City Royals. And in fact, that expansion year was hastened because the city of Kansas City and the state of Missouri was going to sue baseball for taking the A's away, and they had to speed up that, and it caused trouble because Seattle was one of the expansion teams and they weren't ready yet, and they became the Brewers. It became this tangled web that would have all been cleared up if Finley was just a little more patient. It's funny, it's fascinating to look at all the different places that he could have moved to. He played footsie with the people of Dallas in the early 1960s, shortly after he bought the team, and it didn't work. Not much happened there, but you wouldn't have had the Texas Rangers. It would be the Dallas A's, that Finley would have had there. And then I always have found the absolute strangest near move was when he made the announcement he was going to move the Kansas City A's to Louisville, Kentucky, and they were going to be renamed the Kentucky Colonels. And Finley was notoriously cheap in many ways, and a lot of people felt that the reason he wanted to change the name to Kentucky Colonels was because the A's hat when they played in Kansas City was a KC for Kansas City. And people thought, well, he wants to call them the Kentucky Colonels because he could save money. He wouldn't have to create new hats. They would remain the Kentucky Colonels. But the city of Louisiana was eager to bring in the A's. And there was a minor league stadium, Cardinal Stadium, which would have been available for them to play in. And it would have created a strange alternate universe that if everything else had fallen into place, this was in the mid 60s, he wanted to do this. And a lot of the stars that became part of the great A's run were already in their system at that point. Louisiana is very close to Cincinnati. If you would have had the A's develop in the same way with Joe Rudy, Reggie Jackson, Catfish Hunter, Vita Blue, and all of them getting to the World Series, playing against a big red machine, you would have had a Louisville and Cincinnati World Series. And Louisville and Cincinnati are relatively close to each other. You know, Cincinnati is right across the river from Kentucky. And so that would have been like the great Kentucky World Series. We wouldn't know. We still don't know. They're still stupidly doing Las Vegas. And, you know, I made the pitch to the Rays on Locked On MLB to consider New Orleans. But I actually don't want the Rays to move, and I want the A's to move. I think they can both work. But we may never find out with the A's. But you're going to find out with me as I'm going to be continuing to do a podcast of the A's all season long. So follow us at Locked On A's on Twitter or whatever it's called now, and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Talking about how New Orleans is a better place to play Major League Baseball than Las Vegas. And I'll go to the mat fighting that. This has been Locked On A's. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.